Hello and welcome to album pickups of April 2019, and it's been a bit of an exciting pickup today. Now normally when I go and get albums, I normally go to shops and buy a couple of new albums, but in this case I've got one new album and a load of second-hand albums. That's where it gets really exciting. So starting off with a sort of theme we've been keeping up quite consistently for now, a black metal album. So this is Deathcrush by Mayhem. And I've picked up a couple of Mayhem albums, and I used to see this one around when I wasn't really sort of wanting to buy from them, because I hadn't really gone into them yet, and now it's become one of those albums where I just could not find it no matter where I looked. It was getting really annoying, but now finally I tracked one down. Now this is the first sort of proper release, or some people cite it as the first proper release of the second wave of black metal, the Norwegian side of black metal. As it's Mayhem's sort of first, you could call it an album. It's technically an EP. For those who don't know, a full album is also known as an LP for long play, and you have a single, which is like I normally have B-sides, so 2 tracks up the SP single play. We also have EP extended play, which is somewhere halfway in between. This album isn't very long. I think it's like 20-something minutes in total, but I sort of count it as a proper album or something worth picking up, whereas I don't count certain other EPs as worth picking up because of what's actually on it. So sometimes in the modern day, sort of say the last 10 to 20 years or so, EPs are kind of used as a demo for the next album that comes after them. Now by this, I mean that the EP will have a load of songs on it that are going to later appear on an album that comes out afterwards, and so that's why normally when I see an album in the shops or online or anything, it's labelled as an EP, especially if it's new. I don't bother to buy it, because in hindsight I'll probably end up having to buy the same songs again when the next album comes out. But sometimes, obviously this is where hindsight comes in for when you're buying older albums, you realise that they're actually sort of standalone albums of their own. They're just a bit shorter, and that's certainly the case with Deathcrush. Now I think Mayhem also had another album, Wolf's Lair, something like that? I just double checked it, it is Wolf's Lair Abyss, and that's also a sort of standalone album. It's just shorter. I think that, if you want to think of another one, Dream Theater's A Change of Seasons is deemed as an EP, even though, it doesn't have songs that appear on later albums. It's a big album of itself. It's a fair bit longer because it actually has a very long composition inside, but I think most of the rest of it, off the top of my head, I think is covers. So this was definitely worth a pick up to add to the old collection. To be honest, I prefer sort of some of the stuff that's come out afterwards. This is definitely a bit rough and early, but then, this is considered to be one of the first, if not the first, album of the second wave of black metal to come out. And it's got, the rogues gallery of them on the back there. Interestingly enough, the only person in this lineup who's still a member of the band today is Butcher, the bassist. Of course, Euronymous would die a couple of years later, oddly enough, because this is from their original Deathlike Silence record label. They're advertising the debut album from Butterson, and of course Var from Butterson would eventually end up killing Euronymous. So, there's all, when you come to the early Mayhem stuff, there's always a bit of sort of that folklore around, the killings and the burnings and all the crazy stuff. But the music's pretty good too. That's obviously the main event still. There's actually 2 singers on there. I think they have Maniac, who would appear as their singer later on after their next album, and after the album after that, I think he would start being the singer until a couple of years ago, where he'd be replaced again by Attila, who replaced him for D. Santanis. And we have Messiah, I think the original singer of the band there, who is just on 1 or 2 tracks in this album. Yeah, it's a really cool little thing to pick up. So, I got all these in the same day actually. I was wandering through the city I was visiting, and I saw a second-hand record and CD shop, and I thought, why not go in there and have a look at a load of albums? So first thing I did is I went and looked at their metal section, which wasn't too big. There was some good stuff in there, but it was all stuff I already had, and I thought, well, let's go over into the jazz section. And I got a haul from that. So for as long as I can remember, since I sort of discovered them while I was at university and got into them, I've been looking everywhere for some albums by the Brecker brothers, the duo of Randy Brecker on trumpet and Michael Brecker on saxophone, and I found a couple of their albums here. So first thing I found was Heavy Metal Be-Bop. Now that's a poorly aged image, isn't it? Was this cool in the 70s, this image? Because it doesn't look good now. But it's a really fun album. It's actually a live album, though I didn't think it was, because oddly enough, despite my dad absolutely hating jazz, he knew and had a single that came off this, which is East River, which actually is the only studio song in this album, because it turns out Heavy Metal Be-Bop is a live album. And more fun than that, the version I got is, I believe, that's Japanese. So I got a Japanese copy in Japan, so I assume it's a Japanese version. If that's not Japanese I'm reading, I've got it completely wrong. Please tell me what language it is. And we've got sort of the other members in there. Really, really fun. A part of the joy of jazz, if you're not initiated into jazz, unlike in rock music, for example, where half the time when someone does a solo, they'll play exactly the same what they played on the album, or they'll sort of half improvise. Sometimes they'll go into fully improvising. The joy of jazz is it's not going to be the same as to what you heard on the record, at least not for the solos. They'll start off and all the melodies, or the head if you will, are all going to be the same, and the songs are set up, and then they will just go off the wall soloing, and that's what I love about jazz, and that's what a lot of people who I know who dislike jazz dislike about it. So that can be the fun as well of a live album, because they will just go off the wall more of it. So if you like that kind of thing, it's a good album, definitely worth having. And then I struck gold a second time when I was able to pick up a full studio album of them. I was able to pick up the Return of the Brecker brothers. So I know that they had, I think they'd sort of split sort of acrimoniously in sort of the 80s. I know that they've both gone their separate ways to do solo careers and have other things. I know that Michael Brecker, as well as a solo career, joined a band called Steps Ahead, who are worth listening to, and I'm always on the lookout for some of their music. And to be honest, this is another sort of dated album cover. You wouldn't see stuff like this sort of animation stuff being used nowadays. I think this is 1992. I was 1 year off, and this is a really like fun, bizarre album. There's a couple of weird tracks on there. Like there was one sort of weird one, that's all there is to it, that I wasn't so into, but there were some really odd like jammy ones like The Big Idea and Above and Below. And if you like Brecker Brothers, if you like sort of just slightly mad jazz fusion, you know, it's definitely like, it's definitely seeping in sort of like the funk and dips into rock and just goes off doing crazy stuff. Really fun album, definitely worth picking up. And then, just to keep the Breckerness going, I found one of Michael Brecker's solo albums, Now You See It, Now You Don't. And I was a bit sort of unsure, because I've heard his stuff in the Brecker Brothers band, and I've heard his stuff in Steps Ahead. And I was thinking, you know, sometimes people do great stuff in bands, but not so much break stuff on their own. Picked some up just because it was there, and I wasn't going to say no to it, and I'm glad it did. It's a really fun album. To be honest, I do prefer this one to it, but to be honest, Michael Brecker's my favourite of the two Brecker brothers, so to hear just loads of just his soloing is fantastic. And there he is, the happy chappy on the back there. I don't know much about the rest of his solo career, but yeah, this album's pretty good to go for. Sticking with jazz, same shop, I was able to pick up 2 more albums by another band that I've been looking for stuff for. So, a band I actually mentioned in one of my previous album pickups videos when I was able to finally find a copy of their first album, and that band is the Yellowjackets. So I picked up 2 albums by them. The first one is The Spin, which, to be honest, out of all the albums I've picked up, if I were to say one had the best album cover, it would be this. I really like this one, the them spinning on there. Yellowjackets are another sort of electric jazz fusion band. But for this album, it seems a little bit more sort of reserved and held back compared to their previous album. There's a lot more use of sort of straight up pianos and less use of things like synthesizers and organs. And I'll be honest, this album has yet to grow on me, really. I think I do like that sort of slight cheesiness that those instruments bring to the music, and it's a bit missing on this one. I feel like I need to give it a couple more listens. But what I don't need to give a couple more listens to is an album I also got by Yellowjackets, Greenhouse. And this one is full of the synths and full of the organs and full of all the weirdness. It's quite fun. It's not quite as good as the self-titled debut album that I got by them, but if I were to rank them, you know, I'd do self-titled first, then this one, and this one out of all the ones I've got. And this is a really good album. If you've got the 2 in front of them and you want something a bit more subdued, I'd go for The Spin. If not, Greenhouse is definitely worth picking up. So, quite a haul there, and what would I say my favourite album out of all of them is? Out of the whole haul I got this time, it's got to be The Return of the Brecker Brothers. I feel like there's little else to say about it. If you like jazz fusion, just give the album a listen. I think you'll see what I mean if you listen to it on there. And so that concludes the album pickups for April 2019. There'll be another album pickups video, assuming I pick up something up in May at the end of the month, towards the end of next month. If not, there should also be more videos coming out in the meantime. And if you enjoyed, please like, share and subscribe. Goodbye. Got a haul from that.